Sustainability requires a strong leader. When trying to cut emissions or implement a corporate recycling program, a company must change from the culture, people, to the mindset. A leader at any level requires the right mindset and skills to make that happen. This is why we brought on a leadership expert, Vaishali Wagle. Wagle is the founder and CEO of Zenesse, a coaching and research firm specializing in people and business transformation. As an executive leadership coach and personal branding consultant, she collaborates with global leaders from Fortune 500 companies. Her professional journey includes significant roles at JP Morgan and Citigroup, focusing on investment banking technology and leadership development. So, in this episode, you will learn about change management strategies for your organization and leadership. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I introduced you, but could you also introduce yourself a bit?
Thank you so much for having me, Vanessa. It's such a pleasure to be with you. And I have seen a lot of your work, and it's remarkable how you've made a dent in the space on sustainability. And I'm very glad to be with you in conversation. Uh, a little bit about myself from what else you've said. Um, I think if I were to describe myself, it would be a meandering brook who's trying to explore new territories and new opportunities. And maybe if I were to just give you a glimpse of my journey so far, it would look like three stages. Um, the student, Vaishali, who started as a very curious student and went on to excel at academics, something that I was very proud of. Went into a techie. So that's the second stage of the brook, moving as a techie. I believe the DNA of the techie still is within me. And this was a nomadic techie in my mind who, while loving the technology, was always a little restless to say, what else? What more is there? What else can I figure? Maybe the curiosity still existed.
Yeah.
And then I believe in the third stage of the meanderingness as a coach
Hmm.
who probably is a little bit of a visionary and an inspiring coach, who has both the curiosity and the nomadicness of the techie within her. So that's been how I feel I have lived so far.
Wow, yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. And you've had such a diverse experience, I know, from leading, teams in investment banking to running your own company. And of course, you mentioned now, coaching executives and leaders on how to kind of make some really key mindset shifts for themselves. And I know that, all of our audience, probably wants to become better leaders themselves. How does that, that mindset shift really take place? Whether it's within yourself or within someone else and you're trying to help them change. What are some of the kind of key pieces to a mindset shift?
That's a wonderful question. I believe as a coach, this is a lot that I've realized in the work that I'm doing, that our mindset really governs a lot of what we do. And generally, we call it unconscious behavior.
Mm.
But if you were to say, hey, mind, allow me to control you,
Yeah.
that's the space that as coach, I work a lot,
Mm.
because we then favor action and more sustainable action that then goes back and tells the mindset, hey, this is how we could operate better.
Mm.
So if a seed of desire or ambition or even revenge
Mm.
is laid in a soil, and that soil is really our mind, I believe it's the mindset that is going to nurture it.
Yeah.
And that same mindset could nurture the seed into a wonderful sapling, or it could kill it in the way
Mm.
that the mindset processes the day-to-day circumstances and environments.
Yeah.
So for anyone moving through a transformation, the way you asked, are leaders moving through change and transformation, which in the past, I believe, used to happen every few years. But
Yeah.
today, is not a surprise that they may have to move through major transformations every few months with the
Yeah.
kind of change that we're seeing
Mhm.
around us. And the mindset of this individual leader could play a vital role in how they are both um, experiencing that change
Mm.
that's happening around them, and then more importantly, how they are willing to respond and the choice that they make. Finally boils down to the choice that we all make. And if you want to sow that seed and nourish it into a sapling, or would you rather sow that seed and kill it
Yeah.
because it's not worth it? So that's really where the mindset is. I think if you were to just ask me simply, the space of mind is something that across our spectrum, it's not just the coaches, but there are therapists and counselors who also work on this, and they generally go into the history of the individual to figure out what could be those dynamics. But as a coach, we work in the spectrum of 0 to positive. And so I simply like to look at mindset as saying, hey, can we do something that allows us to overcome an obstacle and just go past it,
Yeah.
rather than putting our energies into the obstacle? How do we redirect the energies around it so that we
Yeah.
reach the transformative goal?
Absolutely. And certainly a lot of positive reinforcement as a part of that mindset shift to start thinking about what is the goal instead of what is the challenge. I love that. Well, you work with a lot of, Fortune 500 company executives as well as a lot of executives globally. Do you have kind of any experience in terms of what are some of the key challenges in that mindset shift for a lot of these executives? Because when we're talking about sustainability, mindset is so important because we have to change a culture, we have to change a team to radically change their operations to be more sustainable. This is a huge shift. And whether we're talking about sustainability or any other kind of shift, it's a really big, massive change. And we have to be in the right mindset to be able to accomplish it. So, from your experience, what are some of the key kind of challenges that normally come from not being able to set the right mindset or challenges when you're trying to make that mindset shift?
Yeah, you've really touched upon something wonderful here, Vanessa, because the leader of today, irrespective of the industry, here's why this is so big. Irrespective of the industry, irrespective of the region or the country they belong to, we are all seeing a massive transformation.
Hmm.
And this is both at a business level, at the environment level, and of course, in the space of sustainability that both you and I are sort of passionate about in some sense. We we're seeing this transformation purely because of the kind of changes and the technological advances that you and I are experiencing in AI or other spaces. Also, the rate of transformation is
Hmm.
dynamically very different. So if the leader was to say, hey, all right, there's a new change happening, and let me process it in my own time, they don't have the luxury of that anymore, because by the time they figure out how to process that, a new thing has hit them. And we've
Yeah.
seen studies, primarily there's one study from the World Economic Forum, which predicted by the end of this year, literally by the end of 2025, they've said that 85 million jobs may be displaced by automation.
Wow.
But there's also good news that 97 million new roles could get created,
Hmm.
which in other words means what I did yesterday may no longer be relevant, but there could be a new opportunity for me as a leader tomorrow, and I need to prepare myself for it. And that's really what sustainability could look like for this person, to stay relevant in the workplace and to figure out what are some actions I could do today to be ahead of this curve. Now,
Yeah.
I say ahead of this curve with a lot of humility, because it's going to be very difficult to stay ahead of the curve, but at least be alongside this radical change that's happening. Because as a leader, there is an interesting other piece of material that I had read somewhere. I think it was a TED talk, where this AI scientist offered a new way of seeing what AI really means to us. And he offered the term digital species, which
Hmm.
in other words means if we are human species, there is literally a parallel world of digital species that is being created alongside us. And if we and the digital species were to coexist, what would that look like? And to answer your question, I would say for this human leader, it could mean how do I figure out a way to coexist with this digital species? How do I find ways for my team to
Yeah.
also be comfortable alongside this? And more importantly, what are some ethical and values driven practices that I could embed in this digital species so that it works in the favor of human sustainability
Yeah.
versus against it? And I think these could be some of those transformative thoughts that our leaders, I would encourage our leaders to look at and go after. It's no longer a case of human productivity.
Hmm.
I know we've favored human productivity. Most businesses have always looked at measures and metrics around human productivity, which is how can I make this human more productive? I
Yeah.
think AI and other kind of changes in technology are anyway going to make businesses productive. You don't have to look at human productivity more. So I think it's more of how can I look at human sustainability? And if the
Yeah.
dialogue can shift from productivity to sustainability, I think we would do wonders for this transformative shift for our leaders and for the rest of the human species
Yeah.
that we are all part of.
Absolutely. I think it's going to take, a lot of visionary leaders to make that transition possible in a way that's ethical and makes sense. So yeah, I think that's such a beautiful way to put it. Um, this reminds me of a piece of your book, which is coming out soon, and by the time this is released, it will already be out. And you mentioned peak framework, and I'll talk a little bit more about your book later, but we talked about mindset. I'd love if we kind of introduce peak mindset and peak framework as well too, because, of course, thinking about how can a leader, raise through the ranks of a particular organization. Of course, your book is called Scaling Peaks: Nine Untold Truths for Climbing the Ranks Through Leadership. But I think there's some really great insights in it in terms of how can leaders rise through the ranks. When we have this context that you've laid out for us of this very competitive market, rapidly evolving technology, and just all of these new factors that leaders are going to have to be thinking about, including sustainability. How can you rise through the ranks? How can you, get promoted? How can you, come into a position of power so that you can actually make some impactful change, whether it's with sustainability or it's with its, social impact in AI or things like that. So I would love to, chat a little bit about that as well.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you for bringing that up. The book really, um, I think the idea of the book was seeded somewhere a couple of years ago, but it's again one of those that the seed never took shape for very different reasons. And then a few months ago, it suddenly was one of those days where I said, "Hey, I think I must do something where I can reach a lot more people
Yeah.
than the ones that I'm able to service through my coaching."
Yeah.
And that's generally what I think every entrepreneur goes through this turmoil, which is, can I serve more? Can I do bigger impact at scale?
Mhm.
And so the book really started to take shape with that intent. So in some sense, you can already figure out that it's borrowed from my coaching practice and a lot of learnings from uh, real world stories, everyday leaders that I've had the privilege to coach and also be mentored by in my days as an employee. So scaling peaks is metaphorically just that, like how do you climb the ranks of leadership? But at the same time, it's all about being someone uh, who then starts to achieve the peaks.
Mhm.
So the goal is not really the peak. The goal is the behaviors that would take you to the peak, and the peak just happens because you've embedded those behaviors within you. And like you mentioned, Vanessa, the space of any kind of industry is in such a turmoil. By the way, there are words like VUCA, which we've all been aware of, used in the military, but probably now more famously used in corporate life. I haven't seen any presentation or conversation where the term VUCA had not come up, and so it's quite ironical that I also bring it up. But with this kind of space that we're all living in, what starts to happen for a leader generally, and I'm not talking of early career leaders really. I'm talking of more mid-career people who've put in like 20, 25 years of their work experience in, and they find themselves at these various stages of uh, questioning themselves really to say, hey, what does my next peak really look like?
Yeah.
What does career advancement look like for me? What are those? And a lot of them are also at these points where they are saying, hey, is there more to life than what I've done so far? And is there a way for me to attain something else? So if we were to say, hey, we want to help these individuals climb their next peak, whatever that next career peak looks like, uh, then when I thought of this book, I said, hey, the techie in me got activated a little bit, who said, you have to simplify the whole concept. You have to give it in a manner that uh, people anywhere reading it will be able to apply. And so I came up with a framework which consists of three universal pillars. And these pillars are, think of it as like a tripod, and the foundational strength of anything lies in that pillars. And these three pillars are being remarkable, being memorable, and being promotable.
Hmm.
And to get these three pillars, there are behaviors that will help you. So every pillar comes with three behaviors each, which give us those nine behaviors, or the nine untold truths. And the reason I call them untold truths um, is simply because a lot of these leaders haven't really been told some of these things. There is a lot of awareness that people want to do something, but it hasn't been captured in a manner that's simplified and put in paper from the experiences of the people who've climbed the peaks before us. And that's really what this framework offers the reader, which is you just have to focus on three pillars and the nine key behaviors that allow you to climb a peak. It doesn't matter which peak you're climbing, but adopting these practices can make a remarkable difference in the way you approach the journey. And you probably can make out I'm all about the journey and who the person becomes as a part of this journey is what this story is all about. And I thought the best way to bring that alive would be through some stories, and that's what every peak behavior offers us, not just one, but sometimes two or three stories to see how people, real world people, you and me,
Yeah.
have made it happen.
Absolutely. I think that stories are really the best way of teaching when it comes to, particularly, I think, giving, practical business advice to leaders, because you don't really learn a lot of these lessons until you've seen it through someone else's eyes. So I think that's great. Would you mind sharing with our audience a few of some of these untold truths? I think that our audience is very curious now, and they'll want to look at your book afterward, this episode. But yeah, I would love if you could share just a few of these with our audience.
Oh, sure. Happy to. So I would start, and this, I don't want to do this like a little masterclass of something, but literally I would start engaging the audience to say, hey, if you have to climb a peak, um, that itself is what we call in this book and in my coaching is called a peak goal. And any peak goal has three elements in it. It has to be a YMD goal, which means it's yearning, meaningful, and demanding. the obvious meanings of each of these words. So yearning is if you get up in the middle of the night, this goal should cross your mind. It's like, yeah, I'm working on this. It has to. It doesn't necessarily need to keep you awake, but it has to cross your mind. You are yearning for it. It
Mm.
has to be meaningful because we've realized that scaling a peak of any kind is a fairly lengthy journey. It's not something you think of today and happens in a few days. And the length of the time in itself is a challenge, but at the same time, what this brings are different kinds of hurdles. You may have days when you just say, I don't really have to do this. Why did I put myself through this? Like I've had those days when I started with the book, which is why am I putting myself through all this trouble, right? So you just want to have something meaningful identified to say, to keep you going, really, and that's important. And then to realize that it's demanding. It is going to be demanding because it will stretch you out of your comfort.
Mm.
And I'm not someone whoever coaches that, oh, you should step out of your comfort zone and go into the discomfort zone. But I would always say, hey, try and expand your comfort zone
Mm.
to capture a little bit more of those curious zones or challenge zones, if you will. And so demanding is important because any goal that is not demanding is not really a scaling peak goal. You could probably do it quickly, right? So the first thing is that you figure out what that scaling peak goal is, figure out your peak goal, and see if it passes through the YMD test, literally, and put it through that test of why it's yearning for you, why it is meaningful for you, and also bring out your awareness of how it will be demanding, which means uh, be prepared for what sacrifices you may have to make, if at all. Be prepared for the known hurdles that could come in the way, so that it's it's always wonderful to put that out, because then your mind behaves very differently when you hit that hurdle. Your mind is like, oh yeah, I know that. You told me
Yeah.
that a few weeks ago that this might happen, and we are not supposed to panic when it happens, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's just that. So that's the first step, and we go through this in the first peak behavior, which is called identifying your peak.
Mm.
And that's really getting down to the clarity, because a lot of times we have so much of awareness within us, but that could cause just thinking and overthinking. When you put it down like this, it brings clarity, and then clarity leads to action.
Mm.
So now it comes to the point of action, which is, how do I really start scaling the peak? And this is where the trio of the remarkable, memorable, and the promotable starts to take shape. And I'll probably give you like a couple of other behaviors around these. So when you think remarkable, um, it is encouraging the reader to say, take your focus from just performance to value creation, because we've seen a lot of leaders in even in sustainability space, even in businesses, even in academia, who do such great work. So they're giving great performances, but not necessarily just shifting that needle a little bit more to say, how do I create value? And
Mm.
so being remarkable is being able to create that value, and the kind of impact that makes others want to talk about your work.
Mm.
And that's being remarkable. Like they remark upon your work. So rather than shying away from a feedback, you're actually seeking feedback and testimonials.
Mm.
And one of the ways of being remarkable is, there are lots of ways. I mean, you'll probably, when you read the book, you'll see that we've given different kinds of behaviors and examples. But one of the most common ways is literally this aspect of shaping the dream.
Mm.
And what do I mean by shaping the dream? This is one of our peak behaviors, is either there is an organization dream that you're part of, or you have a dream that you want the team and the organization to really support. How can you show that dream to people? How can you show the reality also? And how can you bend or find ways to mold these opportunities into the possibilities of tomorrow. So it's not always that the reality is all great and roses. You
Mhm.
will find murky things, but is there a way for you to tap into some of those opportunities and shape a dream that both you, your teams, and your village? There's a concept of village in one of our behaviors that we speak of, and how are you able to get the entire community excited about doing some of these things? So that's a behavior called shaping the dream, which is part of being remarkable. And then the other thing I would offer our readers, just as a probably as a teaser more than anything else, because I won't do justice talking about it in like a couple of minutes, is around being memorable. And I have seen a lot of leaders shy away from even trying to do something that seems like marketing, and most people think, oh, that's not me, I wouldn't work on it. And it also sort of ties in with a piece of work that I do around personal branding. But being memorable is not about sleazy marketing yourself. It's literally about being able to put yourself out there to say, who am I in the minds of others?
Mhm.
What have I created? How am I connecting with others? And how do they remember me? And so in some of our coaching programs, we just do this fun thing of saying, hey, call a few of your trusted network and ask them to describe you in 5 words. And
Mhm.
that's really a great way of just like a diptych test to say, hey, how do people remember me?
Yeah.
Now, it could start with this little thing and then go on to the big, great stuff of what kind of legacy am I leaving? So being
Mm.
memorable is literally that. And if we were to tie it back to sustainability, it really is linking to the fact that what is sustainability finally? It is what am I doing today that nurtures tomorrow?
Mm.
And being memorable is one such aspect of saying, hey, who am I? How am I being? That allows me to be remembered in a manner that may possibly leave a legacy that I wish it leaves. So that's the other thing that I would say. So hoping that the readers, your audience, loves some of these aspects when they pick up the book.
I love that. I think that's such a wonderful framework. And it's wonderful too because, that's something I've seen in almost all sustainability leaders as well too. In terms of leaving a legacy, that's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of sustainability leaders get into the work that they're doing. That's normally one of the biggest motivations to get into this work. And even going back to doing something demanding and doing something meaningful, all successful leaders that I've seen have practiced those two things. They're going to do something meaningful for the company. They're going to do something visionary, and they're also going to do something demanding, something that's charting in uncharted waters there. Um, I want to use one of these case studies, and it's a case study that's very common in sustainability to kind of apply some of these concepts that you're talking about. It's called interface, and for our audience who may not know what that is, it's a very famous sustainability case study because back in the 1990s, it was this, mid-tier public carpet manufacturing company in Georgia. It was a very traditional business model, and they were actually quite polluting. They had actually lobbied US representatives to pollute and to have no environmental regulations on their operations. And in the 1990s, they decided to make a huge switch to sustainability, and they ended up becoming carbon positive, which means that they were actually reducing their carbon footprint past that point zero. And they actually became restorative, meaning they gave back to nature more than they took from it. And it all started with Ray Anderson. It actually wasn't successful at first. Ray Anderson said, "Hey, we're going to be sustainable. We're going to be, the most innovative and the greenest company in the United States." It actually took him 2 years to convince his team to make this shift. So I think this is a great case study for leadership in this regard because it actually didn't happen overnight. Not everyone got on board. There wasn't that mindset shift. There wasn't that cultural shift. Even he himself didn't know exactly how he was going to accomplish this. It ended up being that they created some breakthrough patents when we talk about demanding. They actually worked in collaboration and demanded their suppliers to come up with this new patent that had recycled plastic that's now used by Gucci and Adidas and all these big brands. But at the time, they didn't really know anything. And actually, his company himself was actually pushing back on Ray Anderson himself. So I kind of just wanted to raise this as part of our conversation and maybe apply some of these things. I mean, I think the thing that kind of comes up most to me is thinking about something visionary and impactful. That's certainly something, that he did at that time. And it eventually started to kind of kick in 2 years later to convince the rest of the company. But, as a leadership expert and coach, if you were coaching Ray Anderson at that time, how would you kind of walk him through some of these, frameworks to be able to think about how can I convince my company to make this huge leap of faith with me?
It's wonderful. I wish I would have taken this story into my book, but nevertheless, we could talk about it in a manner of the three principles of
Mm.
scaling peaks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to recognize the context of this. So it was the early 1990s, right?
Yeah,
That's
when sustainability wasn't as popular as it is today. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that context is important because whatever I might offer today, while everybody would say, hey, but that's not a big deal, it was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things we could sort of break this down into if it was a case study and if I was
Yeah.
coaching, if I had the privilege of coaching Ray Anderson, let's say that. One is scaling peaks as an individual is very different from scaling peaks with your
Hmm.
team.
Hmm.
And the book, of course, gets into those aspects as well. Because as an individual, uh, if Ray Anderson had this sudden flash of moment where he said, "Hey, enough of polluting, and let's get to mission zero," then the yearning, meaningful, and demanding goal would be something that would click for him very easily. And he would say, why am I yearning for this? Why is this meaningful for me? And I know it's going to be demanding, but he will go through that journey, or he would have gone through that journey in a certain manner. But it's not the individual that we are talking of. If we're talking of the organization, we're talking of the every artist and craftsman in that organization who also had to be made to feel the same yearning and meaningful and demanding experience of what
Hmm.
Ray Anderson must have felt. So I think that's the first step, which
Hmm.
is when there is a business transformation, it's how do you make it YMD for the entire organization. It starts there. And we've known that changes, there is that whole change curve where people are at different stages on the curve. There are early adopters and late adopters and so on. But it's more of saying, hey, that is going to happen. That is nature. It's bound to happen. But how do I still create three things? A company vision and mission that
Hmm.
aligns to this new thing. And it's not to say that I'm dropping something off our vision statement. I'm actually adding a couple of words that bring sustainability to the forefront. So maybe I would coach him to do that, which is start off with redefining the company's vision.
Hmm.
And the mission statements will have at least one line that says, and therefore our mission is to do this. The second thing I would ask him and ask his probably the board to pay attention to would be certain policies. Every organization again has policies, and when we teach business transformation to organization, we look at some of these little things, like it starts with the core and then it goes on to how daily life functions in an organization. So people are governed by certain policies, and how can we have the policies that support this change? So it's similar to a new habit that has to kick in. So if I have to, let's say, uh, drink water more than I've done, I have to create an environment where water is near me all the time. If
Mm,
it is easy for me to see water and have access to water, that new habit will kick in much easier than if I have to walk, like 25 steps to get water, even 25 steps. So
right.
how do I create policies that allow for this new environment of seeing sustainability thrive, and how do I make every employee feel that? That would be the second thing of creating that policy support change. um, and somewhere the culture needs to also imbibe this, and celebrating sustainability would is something that comes to my mind. If I particularly have seen a lot of leaders go from one change to another change, or one big challenge to another big challenge. So even sustainability leaders I've seen say, "Hey, I've accomplished this. We've got this kind of results in this particular sector, in this particular organization. Let's go on to the next."
Mm,
There's one little thing that I always encourage leaders to do, which is pause and celebrate.
mm,
Let that milestone sink in. Let people feel, and the celebration needn't be something that you're spending tons and tons of money on it. It's not really that. It's really taking a moment of pause to reflect on all the great work that the team has done, and then moving from there. So can you create a culture of celebration of
mm.
sustainability is what I would encourage Ray Anderson to look at. So those would be from a business transformation standpoint. I don't know how social media was back in that day. I must have been a student, so I would just say if it was today, the other bit would be to use socials in a manner that makes this a lot more reachable to others.
Mm,
And this is where the trio of remarkable, memorable, and promotable would come, because somewhere I think if he was the trendsetter of this new remarkable shift, there obviously was a lot of intelligence that went into his work to come up with a framework, maybe, or to come up with steps that could be shared with others. And so I would encourage, make it beyond interface, like go beyond your own organization to see if you can be an advisor. And I know this may sound a little counter to saying, hey, why would I give away my expertise to a competitor? But sustainability is not about competition. I think it's more about collaboration. So I would have encouraged him to give out that knowledge and intelligence and the framework to others, and see if more interface like organizations could be created.
that's fantastic. Yeah, and I think that a lot of people in our audience can really take away some of those insights. I really like especially you talking about policy, and creating a structure around some of these incentives. They always show that, sustainability, firms and executives, they're always able to better perform when it comes to sustainability if there's a bonus or if there's some incentive structure surrounding sustainability goals and tying those to those goals. Having policies, having structures within the organization always is more effective when we're setting any kind of big shift like this as well. And just kind of that, visionary, being remarkable, being memorable in that regard too. I think it's a really great way to start to think about visionary leadership. And certainly, I think Ray Anderson certainly embodies that as well too. Um, as we're just wrapping up this conversation, you've offered so many insights to our audience in terms of how you can lead in terms of sustainability, but just any kind of change or shift, how you can lead through those uncertain times. Is there any advice that you'd like to leave our audience with for this last bit in terms of how they can be a better leader?
I'm not I'm not a very advise kind of coach. I'm more like to pull out the advice of that own self, because every individual has uh, lot of wisdom within them. I would just, if you're okay with this, Vanessa, leave leave the audience with a few questions, maybe, and say, hey, is this like guiding questions to see if they can make their
Yeah.
own, be their own coach or be their own Sherpa
Yeah.
as they are scaling the peaks. And these are questions really around mindset and behavior, because literally everything starts there.
Mm.
It's how you process the information around you is where these questions arise. And so first, keeping like a metaphorically, let me keep something in front of the audience so that they are able to process the questions in that manner. So think of kids, think of kindergartners who are on a playground and are going to go through a hurdles race, right? We know the hurdles race, which is they have certain barricades and the kids have to just cross over the barricades to reach to the finish line. And I mentioned this in the book as well, which is my experience of a hurdles race as a hurdles race was not when I was a child, but when I was a parent.
Mm.
Because I don't think a child even sees that as a hurdle. They just see something in front of them and they are visualizing their teacher or their parents standing at the end of the race line, and they just want to get to that, right? And so anything that comes in the middle, I have seen kids literally either crawl under it, jump over it, go past it. Like they've really not bothered to make more than that of that hurdle, which is, oh my God, this is such a big thing. Will I be able to jump over it? Like, I don't think a child really does all of that. It's
Yeah.
we as adults who start to create and attach a lot of meaning to that hurdle and say, oh, that's a barrier. I wish my child jumps over it. I hope he has the stamina to do it. I hope she's not going to stop because there is a barrier there, and so on, right? And so with that, it's just offering the audience with some of these Sherpa guiding questions, which is to say, hey, if if you're on this journey to scaling a peak, and by now you've probably defined what your peak goals are and that they fit the YMD, then the question I have for them is, what are these hurdles that you're seeing as a leader? What are these hurdles that you've converted into barriers?
Mm.
Uh, and do they really merit being barriers?
Yeah.
And if they do, because we cannot take away the fact that there can be both external and internal barriers. Uh, and if they do, then what are some behavior shifts that you could bring that allows you to still go past the barrier, just like a kindergartner
Mm.
who doesn't bother spending their energy on the barrier, but really uses all their energy to just hurdle past it to the finish line. And so, if you could be that kindergartner as you are scaling this peak, um, how would you really approach this entire exercise?
Mm.
Tap into that kindergartner who's within you
Mm.
and see what that little kid would do, probably different from how you are approaching the whole thing today.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful mindset shift. I'm going to be thinking about that later today. And where can people find you online and learn more about your great work and contact you?
Oh, sure. So there is a website for the organization. It's the name of the organization is Zenesse, which is not a dictionary word, as you must have guessed already. It is a blend of Zen and finesse. So the work that I do is in the space of finesse and in a more calm and conscious manner. And that's really how this word came up. So the website is zenesse.in, zenesse.in. And you'll find a lot of my work about coaching programs or being invited as a speaker, etc., on that space. I'm on social at Coach Vaishali Wagle. So you can look me up. Would love to interact over LinkedIn or Instagram and Facebook. Um, I, I think the book would be on Amazon, and you can easily pick it up and give it a read. I would love for people to even gift it to their loved ones, because my intent of writing this book really was, can I reach more and more people and help them scale their peaks? So if anybody feels they want to be a partner in this exercise, happy to collaborate and see how we can reach many more people.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for joining us on this episode of the Sustainability Experts.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sustainability Experts. If you liked the insights from our podcast, feel free to reach out to us on our website. We produce episodes with world-class executives every month and offer exclusive consulting and speaking services globally. Reach out to us and become a leader in your industry.